Hey folks, welcome back to our channel. My name is Nigel and this is Offgrid Van Life. In this video, we're going to be looking at budgets for electrical systems. How much does it actually cost to build out an electrical system? What do you need to be aware of? Because sometimes I speak to people and they don't really realize the sort of full cost or what's involved in it. And I'm going to try and explain a little bit about how I would approach pricing and sizing up an electrical system so that you make sure that you get it right. So the first thing I would say is that when it comes to sizing and pricing your electrical system, the way that I would approach it is always to start on the basis of what do I actually need to do with my electrical system? So am I just going to be running some USB charge ports, running a few LED lights, maybe running a small inverter that allows me to charge a laptop or charge camera batteries or drone batteries or whatever, and then basically running everything else in my van, i.e. the cooking, heating, all that stuff, off other fuels. So maybe having a gas stove and or a gas oven, if you even have an oven, and then have a diesel heater, that sort of thing. Or am I going to go at the other end of the options and functionality that you could choose, which is to have your electrical system running everything except for your heating. So running your stove and your oven and charging and all of that sort of stuff, USB chargers, LED lights, all that stuff. And so those are kind of the two extremes of options available to you in terms of what you actually want to run on the battery and run on your electrical system. Once you identify what you'd like to do, then you need to size it accordingly based on what your requirements are. And it's not to say that you can this is just a linear thing, because sometimes you kind of get down the process of, okay, in an ideal world, I'd like to run everything on electric. So I'd like to have an induction cooktop stove. I'd like an electric oven. I'd like an espresso machine. And obviously the lights and USB chargers and then plugs to plug in my laptop and all that sort of stuff. And then when you actually get to the price of that, it's quite an expensive option. Having said that, it is pretty much completely renewable once you have put it in. So then you don't have the cost of the gas and all of the hassle of changing cylinders and filling up cylinders and stuff like that. So there's benefit and there is value that you get out of spending that extra money. But the initial outlay is quite high compared to if you have a split fuel system. So if you have a smaller electrical system but used gas for your heating, for example. And so sometimes when you go down that route and you start sizing it up, it's like, okay, actually that's over my budget, so need to rein it back in, change things up a little bit, go down a slightly different tact. So hopefully in this video you get some information that will help you in that process, just to kind of see broadly what are the costs associated with the different options that are available in terms of electrical systems. So we're going to jump into a table here that will hopefully help to visualize it. So I've split this out into three ways. So lead acid, lithium 280 amp hours, and lithium 560 amp hours. And so the lead acid option, this is essentially the cheaper option that I mentioned before, where your basic electrics will be run on a lead acid battery system. But for stuff like heating, cooking, all of those sort of requirements that use a lot of fuel, you'll do that with other means, i.e. diesel heater and a gas cooker, that sort of thing. And essentially your electrical system is going to be to charge via USB for your phone, tablets, all that sort of stuff. You're going to run your lights and you're going to run a small inverter that allows you to charge your laptop or drone batteries, camera batteries. And you can run stuff like you can run an electric water pump for your water system, and you can use this battery system to power your diesel heater, because the diesel heater uses minimal electrics, that sort of thing. So that would be fine for this. Lithium 280 amp hours. This is what I've included. So if you want a model where, let's say, you're going to be doing your cooking and your heating is going to be via gas and diesel heater, respectively, but you want the option to have a more substantial electrical system. Maybe you want to be more off-grid. You want the ability to last a few days as opposed to having to do something to charge your battery every single day. Maybe you want the option of having an espresso machine. So maybe something like a Nespresso or even some sort of Sage espresso machine, something like that. Then this would be a good option for that, because it kind of gives you a hybrid. It's a good sort of fairly high capacity battery and electrical system with a 2000 watt inverter, but it also means that you potentially have another source to be able to cook and stuff like that. Having said that, this is sort of in terms of being able to run an induction cooktop and an electric oven. This is kind of the entry level for that level of electrical requirement and draw. So 2000 watt inverter, you could run a single plate induction cooktop on that, and you could run most electric ovens up to sort of 1600 watts thereabouts, and most electric ovens would fall within that. So you'd be fine to run that. So this is kind of a hybrid model of kind of having some gas, some other heating sources, but it also depends on what your options are. So if it's just like one or two people, and you can get away with a single induction stove, single plate, with maybe an electric oven or a microwave, that sort of thing, then this is quite a good option, because then it gives you a lot of capacity. You could last a few days on a type thing. Lithium is very efficient and saves space, saves weight, all that stuff, and it's quite a good model. The next option up is like an all singing, all dancing, top of the line lithium electrical system. So this would allow you to do all of the stuff that I've mentioned. So lights, USB, running your diesel heater, just powering your diesel heater, running electric water pumps, and then you could even put a 3000 watt inverter onto this sort of battery. And that would enable you to be able to run a 2-plate induction cooktop, pretty much any size electrical oven that you can find. Most of them would pretty much run on that. You could run coffee machines, espresso machines, all of sort of electrical appliances. You could even have an electric kettle if you wanted to. That sort of thing would run on this. And so what I've done here is I put in pricing. So for battery, if we start with the lead acid, and these prices are sort of estimates. You can cut corners and make things cheaper. It's just like when you're building a house. It's like, how much does it cost to build a house? It's like, well, it depends on what materials you use and what options you choose, all that sort of stuff. So what I've done here is I've priced it as what I think is the sort of minimum requirement to do a good, decent system that's built correctly, fused correctly, wired correctly, all that sort of stuff, based on the technology and the battery technology and chemistry that you've chosen here. It's not to say you couldn't do this cheaper. So if we take the lead acid option here, for example, it's coming in at just over £1,000, so like $1,400. You can still have a lead acid system that is much cheaper than that. So you could, this is, so £210, that's the price of what you would pay for 2 of these batteries. It's actually slightly lower than that, but let's say you got 2 of the batteries, so it's like £240 thereabouts. You could get away with a split charge system, which is around £44. And then let's say you wanted a solar charge system, so MPPT charger is £150 or $180. Solar panels for sort of 2 or 3, 180 to 250 to 300 watt panels. You're looking at probably about £400, $500 thereabouts. Wiring and fuses, probably about £200. Again, this just depends on how complex your system is as to how much wiring and fuses and fuse holders and all that sort of stuff you need. And then lights and charge ports, I've said £100, probably would come in at less for a more basic system. But that's a good entry level. Having said all this, one of the things that you could consider dropping is the solar. So let's say you live in Northern Europe or the UK, and as we know, for a good part of the year, we get very little sunlight, or usable sunlight rather. So your solar is really not that effective in this part of the world for a lot of the year. So you could potentially drop this and replace this with a DC to DC charger instead of a voltage sensitive relay for lead acid. Should push the price up slightly from the £45 that I've got listed here, but it would drop cost considerably. So you could put, and if you're really strapped for cash, you could put a single lead acid battery in for like £120 thereabouts, a voltage sensitive relay, so £45, and then just the wiring and stuff and more basic. So let's say £100 on that, and then £50 for lights and charging system. So you could very easily come in under sort of the £400 mark if you went down a really cheap option. But this is for 2 lead acid batteries and some estimates on other things, including solar, which puts it in at just over £1,000. And that would be quite a good system. So in terms of being able to run lights, USB chargers, a small inverter to charge a laptop, that sort of thing would be pretty good. Your limitation would be really that you probably would need to charge it every day. So it means you'd need to be driving every day, or you would need good sunlight every day, or you'd need an additional charger to charge it on EHU every day. So you'd probably get close to the limit on flattening this battery system every single day. So the thing to remember with battery systems is whatever you take out, you need to put back. So if you use all of your battery capacity every day, you need to be generating enough power to put all of that back in every single day. So whether that's going for a drive long enough to charge your batteries or whatever the case is. And the other thing to bear in mind with lead acid using a voltage sensitive relay instead of a DC to DC charger is that they will not charge as fast and efficiently as lithium. Lead acid just can't absorb power as fast as lithium can. And so generally speaking, you'd probably need a longer drive to charge a lead acid battery in full compared to lithium. So that's a point to consider as well. So that's where something that sort of trickle charges your lead acid like solar or an EHU electrical hookup system would be quite attractive. But that's kind of your entry level electrical system. As I said, you can do it much cheaper than that. You can sort of halve that if you want to cut out solar. But yeah, you're talking about a pretty basic electrical system for that. If we look at the middle lithium option, £1,000 for the battery. That's what we charge pretty much for a 280 amp hour OPS 280 battery. DC to DC charger, £150 for sort of a 40 amp charger, which is a good size for this battery. It means that if you deplete it completely, realistically, you need to drive for 8 hours to charge it up. Which is quite a long drive, but with this sort of setup, whether you'd actually use the full capacity of the battery every day, don't know, it depends on how heavy your usage is, but if you have solar, then you could probably get away with a sort of 40 amp charger quite effectively, and you could get quite a lot out of that. Again, I put estimates in here for wiring and fuses. Comes in at just over £2,000 for a lithium battery that's capable of quite a lot of capacity and would do pretty well in terms of usability, what you could run on it. And then also a pretty decent, beefy charging system. And then if we look at the final option here, the lithium 560 amp hour. So this is the custom battery. This picture here is the custom battery that we built for our project van for Delilah. It's a 560 amp hour lithium battery running a 300 amp battery management system. And this is a very high capacity, obviously. Could run a 3,000 watt inverter on here. As I said, you could run a 2-burner induction cooktop. We charge £2,500 to build this battery. That's for the components and the labor. So that's where I've priced it on based on that. Obviously, prices vary for different suppliers, but our price is quite cost effective for the value that you get out of that. Obviously, you could build this battery yourself. It would be cheaper because you wouldn't be paying our labor, but that gives you an idea of what it will cost to actually pay somebody to build this battery. DC to DC charger, I've put in here £170, so that's what it costs for a 60 amp Renogy charger. You could get other DC to DC chargers as well, but they run a little bit more money. That's pretty much the cheapest you could get a fairly high capacity DC to DC charger for. Solar, I've gone for the same option as the previous one. So I think that's a 40 amp Victron MPPT charge controller, and then about 550 watts of solar for that. And then the same sort of pricing for wiring and fuses. This might vary a little bit, but that comes in at around £3,500, which is quite a lot of money. But then again, your capacity is very high. So the important thing with this pricing is it doesn't include any inverters. So you'd have to add that on top if you wanted to go down that route. And it does include sort of diesel heaters and stuff like that. What I've gone for here is just your basic battery and charging system. What you run on that battery and charging system, you then need to add on top of that. And then the big thing with lithium and lead acid, and I'll cover this in a bit more detail in a future video, I think, but people often ask the question, why should I get lithium? Why is it so much better? If we take this battery here, lead acid, so I put a price in here for 2 of these, that would be 2 105 amp hour lead acid batteries. The important thing to remember with lead acid is you can only use 50% of the capacity of the battery. If you deplete the state of charge below 50%, you'll damage that battery. So with 2 of these, realistically, you're probably only going to get about 105 amp hours of usable capacity from this battery. And you will be talking about probably 80 kilograms of weight just for the batteries. So it's fairly low capacity for weight, so your ratio there. But the advantage obviously is the price. So it's much cheaper than other options. If you take this lithium battery here, for example, that's a similar size in terms of just the dimensions. It's sort of a drop-in replacement size battery, but it's 280 amp hours. And the way that we set up the battery management system means that you can use about 85% of that capacity. So realistically, you're probably going to get around 250 amp hours of usable power out of that battery, which is a lot, obviously. More than double what you would get from 2 lead acid batteries. So to match the capacity of this lithium battery, you would need essentially about 5 lead acid batteries. So you're talking about more than 4 times the weight and space that you would need to take it up to get the same capacity. And obviously then, it then becomes quite a big cumbersome thing. If you wanted to achieve the same sort of capacity as this 560 amp hour lithium, so this battery is going to give us probably around 500 amp hours or just below 500 amp hours of usable capacity. You'd be looking at sort of at least 10 lead acid batteries to match that capacity. And in terms of weight, you're looking at over 400 kilograms of weight probably just to have those batteries, and a lot of space taken up by that. So those are all factors to consider when you are planning out your electrical system. Hopefully this has been helpful in some way. As I said, you can shop around and change these prices up a little bit, but this kind of gives you an idea. It's a pretty good starter for 10 in terms of how much does it cost to actually build out an electrical system on a van and what I need to be thinking of. Yeah, hopefully it's been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the description down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's any points that you're not sure of or that you think we need to cover in these type of videos, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.